What's up, everybody? Picture Europe waking up. The medieval world is fading, and a burst of art, ideas, and ambition is about to launch this continent across the whole globe. This is AP, European History Unit 1, the Renaissance and Exploration, roughly 1450 to 1648. Here's your map. The Italian Renaissance and its humanism, the Northern Renaissance and the printing press, new monarchs centralizing power, the Age of Exploration, and the Columbian Exchange that reshaped the planet. The big theme tying it together? Europe shifts from looking inward and heavenward to looking outward, at the individual, at the world, and at profit. Stick with me to the very end, and I'll show you the single fastest way to lock all of this in before exam day. Let's get into it. Start in Italy, the birthplace, and the College Board wants you to nail the why and the what. Why Italy? Wealthy trading city-states like Florence and Venice, plus the ruins of Rome sitting right there for inspiration. The big idea is humanism, an intellectual movement that revived ancient Greek and Roman texts and put the focus on human potential and achievement. Pair that with secularism, a growing interest in the worldly and the here and now, not just the afterlife. And funding it all, patronage. Wealthy families and the church paid artists and thinkers. The most famous patrons were the Medici, the banking dynasty that basically bankrolled Florence's golden age. Money plus ideas equals the Renaissance. Now meet the writer the exam loves, Niccolò Machiavelli. In his book, The Prince, written in 1513, he asked a brutal question: how does a ruler actually gain and keep power? His answer broke from medieval ideals. Forget being purely virtuous, he argued. A leader should do whatever it takes to stay in control, and it's better to be feared than loved if you can't be both. This is secular, practical, results-driven political thinking, a clean example of Renaissance humanism applied to power. Lock in The Prince as the textbook of realpolitik, ruling based on reality, not on how things ought to be. Time for the art, and this is easy points if you know what to look for. Renaissance artists broke from flat medieval style, using new techniques, linear perspective for realistic depth, and a focus on the human body, often celebrating it nude and lifelike. Know your big three. Leonardo da Vinci, the ultimate Renaissance man, painted the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. Michelangelo sculpted the David and painted the Sistine Chapel ceiling. And Raphael painted the School of Athens, which literally gathers the ancient Greek philosophers in one room, humanism on a wall. The through line: art now glorifies the human and the natural world. Now the Renaissance spreads north of the Alps, and it takes on a different flavor, so don't mix them up. The northern version is Christian humanism, same humanist tools, reviving ancient texts and studying sources, but aimed at reforming the church and deepening personal faith, not just admiring classical Rome. The headline figure is Erasmus of Rotterdam, the greatest Christian humanist. In his satire, The Praise of Folly, he mocked corruption and hypocrisy in the Catholic Church. People later said Erasmus laid the egg that Luther hatched, meaning his criticism helped set up the Reformation that's coming in Unit 2. Hold that connection. Here's maybe the single most important invention of the whole period. Around 1450, Johannes Gutenberg in Germany developed the movable type printing press. Before this, books were copied by hand, slow and rare and expensive. Now, watch the chain reaction the exam wants you to trace. Books got cheap and fast. Literacy rose. Humanist ideas spread across Europe at incredible speed. And critically, it let religious reformers broadcast their message to the masses, which makes the press the fuel for the Protestant Reformation just ahead. Memory hook. No printing press, no Renaissance spread, and no Reformation. It is the megaphone of the early modern world. Shift to politics, because while the art flourishes, kings are quietly grabbing power. The College Board calls them the new monarchs, rulers who started centralizing authority after the chaos of the late Middle Ages. How? They built professional armies, taxed directly, and reduced the power of the nobility and the church. 3 to know. In Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella married in 1469 to unite the kingdoms, and in 1492 they completed the Reconquista by taking Granada and expelled the Jews. In England, the Tudor dynasty, starting with Henry VII, restored royal control after a civil war. And in France, kings rebuilt central power after the 100 Years' War. Stronger states, stronger kings, that's the trend. Now Europe sets sail, and this is the unit's turning point. The motives, memorize them as God, gold, and glory. God means spreading Christianity. Gold means wealth, especially a sea route to Asian spices that bypass Muslim and Italian middlemen. Glory means national prestige. Portugal leads first. Prince Henry the Navigator sponsored voyages down the African coast, And in 1498, Vasco da Gama reached India by sea. Then Spain bets on going west. In 1492, Christopher Columbus crossed the Atlantic and reached the Americas, thinking he'd hit Asia. And Ferdinand Magellan's expedition launched the first circumnavigation of the globe, 1519 to 1522, though Magellan himself died along the way. Europe just connected the world. Quick but crucial, because the exam asks how this exploration was even possible. It came down to new technology, much of it borrowed and improved from other cultures. First, the caravel, a small, fast, highly maneuverable ship that could sail against the wind. Second, the astrolabe and the magnetic compass, tools that let sailors figure out their latitude and direction far from land. Add better maps and cannons, and suddenly, long ocean voyages went from suicidal to survivable. Memory hook. Better ships plus better navigation equals a Europe that can finally reach and dominate the rest of the globe. Here's a giant, the Columbian Exchange, the transfer of plants, animals, people, and diseases between the old world and the new, after 1492. Trace both directions. From the Americas to Europe came new crops, potatoes, maize, and tomatoes that boosted European population for centuries. From Europe to the Americas came horses, sugar, and wheat, but also the deadliest export, diseases like smallpox, which wiped out a huge share of the Native American population who had no immunity. And tying it together, the Atlantic slave trade grew to supply forced labor for New World plantations. This biological collision reshaped diets, populations, and economies on every continent it touched. All that new wealth triggers an economic revolution, and the exam tests these terms hard. First, joint stock companies, businesses where many investors pooled money and shared the risk and profit of a voyage, the ancestor of the modern corporation. Second, mercantilism, the dominant economic theory. A nation's power comes from accumulating gold and silver, so you export more than you import and use colonies to feed the mother country. And third, watch the price revolution. So much silver flooded in from New World mines, especially Spain's, that money lost value and prices rose sharply across Europe. New wealth, new business tools, new economic thinking, that's the commercial revolution. Zoom all the way out, because this is the through line the exam will test. Everything in Unit 1 points one direction, Europe turning outward and forward. Humanism turned attention to the individual and the worldly. The printing press spread those ideas to everyone. New monarchs built the strong states that could fund big voyages. Exploration connected Europe to the globe. And the Columbian Exchange, plus the commercial revolution, made Europe rich and reoriented the whole world economy around the Atlantic. Medieval Europe looked inward and heavenward. Renaissance Europe looks outward, at man, money, and the map. Nail that arc, and you own the whole unit. And that's AP Euro Unit 1, the Renaissance and Exploration. Italian Humanism and the Medici, Machiavelli and the art of Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Raphael, the Northern Renaissance and Erasmus. Gutenberg's printing press, the new monarch's centralizing power. The age of exploration for God, gold, and glory, and the Columbian Exchange feeding the commercial revolution. You just covered the whole thing. But here's the truth. Watching is not the same as knowing. Head to AIM 5 and practice Unit 1 for free, with instant feedback on every question. Links below. Now go get that 5, and I'll see you in Unit 2.